Welcome back to Teen TV Deep Dive. Here on this channel, we talk about all things Teen TV. Today, we're going to be doing another ranking video, and we're going to rank every single love interest from the jennyhan universe. As someone who's read all of her books and rewatched all of her series multiple times, I feel like I'm a pretty credible source when it comes to ranking everyone. But again, before we get into it, I wanted to preface that these are my opinions and it's totally valid and okay if you have different ones. So we're going to go from worst love interest to best, my personal favorites. The worst possible love interest out of the whole jennyhan universe is Josh from the Tall the Boys I Loved Before movies. He was really only in the first movie and first book, and we know that he's Lara Jean's first crush ever that she's had, and he lives next door, but over time he kind of becomes off limits because Josh ends up dating Lara Jean's older sister, Margot. And so the reasons why I just don't really like him that much is because he has no personality. We really don't know any of his interests, disinterests, if he's funny, what he likes, dislikes. We don't really know any of that. So I'm not really getting much to work with or to really find a reason as to why I should like Josh. Also, he just had this really weird obsession with Lara Jean's letter to him, and for what reason, I don't know. You would assume that he wanted to get down to the bottom of the letter to figure out if he had feelings for Lara Jean and they were mutual, and he wanted to make sure that those feelings were still current because he wanted to explore something with her. Or B, he really valued the friendship that they had between the two of them because the movies and the first movie and the book really nails it in, tries to make it seem like her and Josh have this really close relationship that they both value. So I would see why, if Josh really cared about their friendship and valued it the same way that Lara Jean does, that he would want to make sure that things were still cool between them and that she no longer had feelings for him. But the way that he didn't really continue a friendship with her for the rest of the movies because he wasn't in the second or third at all, and it was never really revealed that those feelings were mutual or not. So I was very confused as to why it was such a big problem for him. But overall, Josh didn't negatively impact the story, but at the same time, he didn't really impact it positively or really add anything to the movie, except for in the plot. Like, yes, Lara Jean claims that she is willing to fake date Peter because it'll benefit her in the fact of Josh won't suspect her still having feelings for him or a crush on him because she did in that moment. But after those first like 20-30 minutes of the movie, Josh really didn't matter. Moving on to Steven from The Summer I Turned Pretty. I know he's not a main love interest like for the main character per se, but people are always talking about him when I'll see videos all the time that'll be like, oh, are you team Conrad or team Jeremiah? And people will be like, neither. I'm team Steven. So I'll include him in the video. I'm not really a big fan of Steven. I personally think he's annoying to the point where he's just always trying to kiss up to Conrad. He's always just making those snarky comments that nobody asked for. So I don't enjoy his character at all. I haven't really seen much growth, as I think episode 4 of season 3 is the most recent episode when I'm recording this video. So from season 1 to season 3, I haven't seen much growth, especially since there's supposed to be such a big time jump from season 1 to now. So he just didn't really give to me. Him and his relationship with Taylor, I would say, is on screen entertaining, but I'm not really rooting for them to stay together or really just against the relationship and wanting them to break up. I'm very in the middle. I like their banter, but it's just not it for me. Next, I wanted to talk about Conrad from The Summer I Turned Pretty. He's one of the main love interests for the main character, Belly. She's always had a crush on him for as long as she can remember because they've been such close family friends. But for the longest time, Conrad didn't see her in the way that she wanted to be seen until, of course, the summer that she turned pretty. And that's when things really took a turn for their relationship and their connection forever. by the end of season 1, we do see that Belly and Conrad end up in a relationship, and it doesn't last very long. I think it's from like a couple months or maybe a little under a year. They ultimately end up breaking up because Conrad had such a bad attitude, and it ended up ruining her junior prom. So Belly called it quits with him. He kind of egged her on to do so he wouldn't have to actually be the one to have to break up the relationship. But it was Belly's final say that they were going to break up. Now, as to why he got this ranking, he doesn't really have a personality, in my opinion. Similar to Josh, I need some character traits to make me root for a particular love interest, especially when it's the case of a love triangle. I really look for those just personality traits to help me pick a side. And with Conrad, he doesn't really help me do that. I also find it very confusing as to why Conrad even liked Belly, because he spent the longest time in the show saying that she was like an annoying little sister and just treating her like one. So I'm very confused as to when there's online discourse saying that Conrad had always liked her and he always loved her, from what he literally showed Belly and what came across on the screen is that he did not like her. But when we kind of read the books, especially that final book in the series, We'll Always Have Summer, is when you get to his point of view, and that's when you actually see those feelings come by. But it took us a long time. The storyline goes for about the span of like 5 years, I want to say. And when we're finally on year 5, now we're finally seeing those feelings and what Conrad truly thinks about her. I'm overall just not a fan of the tortured soul type of trope where when guys are very dark and mysterious in TV. Not a fan of it. So with Conrad, it just constantly has so many strikes with him that just don't really work in his favor. But I will say that there are some traits about him that I do like. I actually have positive feelings about him so far in season 3, especially because he's been going to therapy, and it seems like after this time jump we've had from season 2, he's doing a lot better in life. So I will give him points for actively trying to do better. I really respect that. Now I feel like we've moved up a bit of a tier, and now these next love interests are people that I actually do like and have overall positive thoughts about. Now we're going to talk about Yuri from xokitty. She's one of the first people that Kitty meets outside of Dae, who she actually moved to South Korea for. I'm not going to get too into any of the people from xokitty because I haven't talked about the show yet on my channel, which I really want to do in the future. But with Yuri, she does have the secret relationship with her girlfriend Juliana that she keeps away from everyone because her parents won't approve of her being gay, and all of the politics that would kind of arise from her family being very public and just being kind of people that should be respected. So they feel like having a gay child wouldn't fit their brand as much. I do like Yuri because she has a really good sense of fashion, and she's super sweet to the people that she likes. At first, her and Kitty butted heads and she didn't like her, so Yuri was very mean to Kitty. But after a while, they got to know each other and actually became genuine friends. I like the side of Yuri that I was seeing. But what makes her kind of lower on my list is because she did come across a little whiny. I do think part of it is coming from a family that has pampered her a lot, and just coming from a family where she doesn't really have much struggles going on in her life. She can come across very whiny and a little spoiled sometimes. And also, I didn't see the chemistry between Yuri and Kitty in the first season, to be honest. I felt like it was a little bit forced just to try and create a little bit more drama, and instead of having a kind of traditional love triangle just between two people, they tried to open it up and kind of create 3 people and have this which direction is she going to go in. They're all so different. So I understand why Yuri was added. But in season 2, I definitely seen a lot more chemistry. I don't know if it was the way that the music was there or the lighting or whatever, but I seen so much chemistry between Yuri and Kitty. And so in season 2, I was like, okay, I get this. I might actually even root for it. So I like Yuri, but she isn't high on my list. I won't, she's not a client of mine, I'll just say. Next also is Day from xokitty. Day we actually met in the final movie of the To All the Boys I Loved Before trilogy because Lara Jean and Kitty are sisters, of course. And so we see that Day and Kitty have this long-term, long-distance relationship on top of that. And Kitty just kind of feels fed up with having to do long distance. So she ends up moving to Korea for him. I generally do like Day, but he's just not the love interest for Kitty. He was nice and he was sweet for the time being, especially in those later movies, seeing Kitty finally grow up and kind of become her own person where she is experiencing love and all those sorts of things. But in the long run, Day is not it for me. We did see that Day's family ends up in some super tight financial times. He was already not the richest, but times get even harder for them, where we see that he ends up willing to date Yuri, fake date Yuri for money because his dad is the driver for her family. Honestly, I don't blame him for wanting to do that for money, especially because it was for his family. So I don't blame Day at all for just having to do what he has to do. But I think he could have been a lot more transparent with Kitty than what he was. He was saying how he wanted to keep it a secret and make it look as realistic as possible for, of course, so that he can get his money. But at the same time, I think that if he truly wanted to tell Kitty the whole entire truth and right away, he could have and nothing would have happened. But then again, I think like, what is teen TV without a little miscommunication? So I'm not too mad at him for that. Overall, I like I just said, he was willing to do all of that to take care of his family and to get money for his family. So he is a good guy and just a family oriented boy. So again, those are qualities that I do like from Day. Now we're going to talk about Jeremiah from The Summer I Turned Pretty. We still have quite a few love interests to go, so it's very shocking that Jeremiah fell low on my list when I was making my rankings, especially since I am Team Jeremiah. But we do see that Jeremiah and Belly kind of have this more friends to lovers type of trope. They also are friends, close family friends, just like with Conrad. But we see that Jeremiah didn't always have those feelings for Belly, and they weren't always reciprocated on Belly's part either. It was something that kind of blossomed in that first season, and we see their relationship grow and continue throughout all three. I like Jeremiah. I think he's fun. He doesn't take himself too seriously. But with that, he can be a little childish. It'll be some moments where he kind of has to be more serious, or people will be like, okay, Jared, stop playing around. But he still is. So I think that's a negative quality to him, especially we'll see that childishness and just not being able to think maturely all the time is something that definitely preys on his demise in season 3. I won't spoil it because season 3 is still coming out, but those were the things that made me think about that. What I do admire about Jeremiah is that he makes his love and interest for Belly known. I think that's such a great quality to have in a partner for Belly. I do think that she deserves to be loved out loud. So the fact that that's just naturally in Jeremiah's personality just goes hand in hand with positive things in a relationship. While I did say that he was childish, I do think that there were times that showed his maturity, especially in season 2, where everybody is kind of disbanded. They were such a close group in season 1, but we see after that summer when Susanna had passed away, we see that everyone has kind of dissipated and everyone's doing their own thing because they're all grieving and going through a lot of pain. But Jeremiah was the one to stand up and try and reunite everyone. And he did that to the best of his abilities. Like, he was fresh out of high school, so for him to be able to drive across state lines and reunite everyone and try and get his brother and console his family during a time of need, I do think that that was very good, especially for his age and how messed up everybody and everything was at the time. I do think that that showed his maturity a lot. Something that I notice about Jeremiah in general is that's too much related to the whole love interest thing, but I do see how other characters and viewers a lot of times downplay his grief. Some people try and justify Conrad's negative actions and behavior as saying, oh, well, his mom passed away, or his mom was sick, and so that's why he was acting like that. But nobody is really there to check up on Jeremiah when he's sad or when he does things and he makes mistakes or doesn't act in the most ideal way. People don't give him that same treatment. We even see it with Laurel, especially. She always takes the time to reach out to Conrad and say, hey, how are you doing? She checks up on him because she feels like nobody else will, and she knows that he's silently suffering. So she tries to be that person that's there for him so that he can get love and affection that he needs. But at the same time, Jeremiah is also Susanna's son. He also lost his mom. He also went through a super serious breakup with Belly in the past. So I don't understand why Laurel doesn't also reach out to Jeremiah. It definitely seems like she's playing favorites. So I think that the relationship between Belly and Jeremiah is mutually beneficial because Belly gets that treatment that I think she deserves from Jeremiah, but also Jeremiah gets someone that understands him and that whole group that really took that loss of Susanna very personally. He finally has someone who will understand and support him through his grief. Now, this next group of people are people that I really like my favorites of each ship. Next is John Ambrose. He was from the sequel of the To All the Boys I Loved Before movie series. He came in because, of course, Lara Jean had a huge crush on him during middle school, so she wrote him a letter. His ended up getting mailed out, and he ended up writing a letter back to her, and turns out that they had crossed paths when they were both doing volunteer work at this senior center in their city. I loved John Ambrose because he was an old soul. I really loved that about him. I liked how he played music. He was also an active member of his community. Like, sir, I seen you volunteering. He was also the first person to make me genuinely enjoy the second chance romance trope. I know it's not technically real for him and Lara Jean because they weren't in a real relationship because they were only in middle school, but I think that was definitely puppy love that was there, and they had a little crush on each other. But to see that kind of those feelings that they had back then, for them to now be older and be a lot more mature and have more complex emotions, to have those feelings for each other once again was super sweet, and I love seeing that. Like I said, I have made a video on the second movie to the All the Boys I Loved Before series, so I won't go too into detail about it, but if you want to hear more about it, you can check it out. In real life, I do think him and Lara Jean would have been together and they would have longevity to their relationship. I do think John Ambrose and Lara Jean were just kindred spirits and got along very well. They didn't really have chemistry per se, but I do think that they had compatibility. So that's why I think that it would have been a long-term committed relationship between John Ambrose and Lara Jean if this were real life. Now we're getting to our top three. In third place, I would say Minho from xokitty. He ends up being the roommate to Kitty's boyfriend Day, and so Kitty some stuff happens where Kitty ends up having to spend a lot of time with Minho. At first, he really dislikes her. He just constantly butts heads with her. He says that he doesn't like her. And of course, as things happen, they get to know each other more, spend more time around each other. Minho ends up figuring out, like, you know what? Kitty isn't so bad. And he ends up developing feelings for her. Now, what I liked about Minho was how sassy he was. It doesn't work on anybody else, but with Minho, it works. It makes him super funny, and he's able to have a lot of banter with Kitty, which I think is pretty cool and entertaining. I do love a good enemies to lovers, so having Minho and Kitty first start off like not liking each other, but then over time those feelings grew was just perfect for me. And Minho was layered. He wasn't always sassy and mean. He was very layered, caring, and sweet. I do also like how he was into self care. I think that says a lot about a person. If they're willing to take care of themselves that well, I think they'll be willing to take care of other people and the people that they love, which we did see that from Minho in season 2. I will say that out of everyone on this list, that Minho has the most personality out of all the love interests. He has personality for days. And for that, I love Minho. In second place, we have Cam Cameron from The Summer I Turned Pretty. He lives in the cousin's beach town that Belly's family goes to vacation at every summer. He ends up seeing Belly, and they kind of knew each other from a Latin convention way back when, but they end up reconnecting. He ends up taking Belly out on a super cute date, but of course, Belly is too tied up in her love triangle with the Fisher boys that she kind of writes off Cam Cameron, and their relationship is pretty short lived. To me, Cam Cameron is so underrated. So underrated. I love how true he is to himself. He isn't the coolest, but he also doesn't try to be. He makes his little dad jokes and studies marine biology, and he's just truly him. And I love that. He's smart, of course. He is studying in the summer and doing homework and internship at such a young age. I feel like that shows that he has some smarts to him. He has goals. One of the things that we constantly know about Cam Cameron from the first season is constantly talking about having dreams to become a marine biologist. Also, something that made him a strong love interest, especially for Belly, is that he doesn't have a weird connection or relationship to her. It doesn't seem like they're family, which is something that I feel like Belly definitely should have considered, because her, Jeremiah, and Conrad were raised basically like siblings. They would live with each other in the summer house for months, and their moms would just kind of raise them all together and love them as their own. So for her to only be so zoned in on those two was pretty crazy. So yeah. Again, he was a gentleman. He took Belly out on a proper date. They went to a cute little drive-in movie, and they seen this old movie. What dates have we seen Conrad and Jeremiah take Belly on? And be honest, I'm waiting. But I do hope to see more of Cam Cameron in season 3. I really enjoy him as a character. I wish he had more of a presence in the book series. I do appreciate how he was able to stay longer in season 2, though. Now, in first place for the best love interest in the whole entire jennyhan universe is Peter Kaminsky. I know it's a huge shock. If you watch my channel and if you know me, you know that I love Peter Kaminsky. I've said it once and I will say it again. He is the blueprint for all TV love interests and movie love interests. He truly changed the game of a rom-com boyfriend and what he should look like. He was very attention to detail. He was very attentive. Even when Lara Jean was like, oh, I think it would be sweet if you wrote me letters. And he actually did, and he followed up with that. He was also supportive, super sweet. He was funny. at times. He was funny, but nobody's perfect. Even the winner of my whole ranking system. My only hang up with Peter is that the super pivotal moment in him and Lara Jean's relationship is when they were fake dating for the longest, and when they all went off to the ski resort, Lara Jean was like,